It's such a headache dealing with my father-in-law. When sales are low, I punish him by skipping his meal. My sister-in-law, Yvonne, blurted out. She drives her father to work from dawn till dusk and even withholds his dinner. My brother simply chuckled at this, unfazed by her harsh words. Poor old man.
I'll take him in,
I offered.
Great. I'll be relieved to be rid of that deadbeat.
With these words echoing behind us, my family and I began a life under the same roof with my father. As it turned out, my father was a god of fortune in disguise. My name is Sally. A 33-year-old part-time working mom with a husband and a daughter who is a kindergartner. My husband recently took over his father's business, running a small diner. Ever since he was a child, he looked up to his father, who would start working early in the morning and serve piping hot meals with sweat pouring down his face. He once told me that his father was even more of a hero than any football player or superhero.
The steam dancing around Dad as he cooked was just magical. I swear he was dancing with the food goddess.
This remark made me question his sanity. But I too saw at the moment I tasted my father-in-law's cooking. It was as if he was indeed dancing with a food goddess. We were somewhat of a weird couple. We got married in our mid-20s. And were blessed with a daughter a few years later. Those were probably our happiest days. However, not long after our daughter was born, my father-in-law fell ill and passed away. His absence was a huge blow to my husband, who had already lost his mother. He even considered closing down the restaurant. But his staff and regular customers encouraged him.
You're the only one who can carry on his legacy. We want that taste to remain. Only you can do that.
Their words inspired my husband, and so he decided to face the challenge, hoping his father would watch over him from the afterlife. However, things were not smooth from the start. Even if he managed to replicate the taste, customers compared him to his father. In other words, he had to surpass his father to be truly recognized. Although he had taken over the business, it didn't pick up as expected and my husband was troubled. Then, another tragedy struck. My mother passed away. I was worried about leaving my grieving father alone, but the 1-hour drive made it difficult to visit him regularly. Seeing my concern, my brother offered to move in with my father. I was grateful, but also had mixed feelings. My brother has always been a bit careless. After all, his favorite phrase is "everything will be all right, believe it or not." My brother was always a bit irresponsible. Adding to my worries was my sister-in-law, Yvonne.
Oh, your husband's a high school dropout? Unbelievable.
She casually tossed at us when we first met. She would openly belittle me. A part-timer? You're a loser as a woman. And they even did not attend my mother's funeral. Apparently, my brother had quit his job to start a cafe and claimed he was too busy. When did you learn to run a cafe? I asked, to which he nonchalantly replied.
I used to skip work and hang out at cafes. Thought it'd be fun to run one.
This almost made me faint. And now, since they moved in with my father, they've started making him help out at the cafe. And they make him work all for free. When I asked her, "What about you, Yvonne? Shouldn't you be the one helping out first?" She replied, "Nah, I don't work. A man's gotta support his wife, right? What on earth is nah? She can't even be bothered to include the T in not, that lazy woman. What could my brother possibly see in her that he willingly supports her?" Then, one day, we decided to visit our family home on a rare day off. Despite informing my brother ahead of time, only Yvonne was at the house when we arrived. "Hello, Yvonne, it's been a while." Yeah, come on in. Make yourself at home. I'll just be watching TV. Yvonne was as insufferable as always. Where's my brother?" "Oh, he said something about sales being down this month, so he decided to open the shop." "Oh, I see." I was taken aback. "Well, it's actually more comfortable without him around," she added. I was shocked not only by my brother's sudden decision to work, but also by Yvonne's attitude. Who says they're better off without their spouse, especially in front of their spouse's sister? I walked into the living room, but no one was there. I thought maybe Dad was in his room, so I knocked on the door, but there was no answer. When I opened the door quietly and peered inside, I was lost for words. There was no trace of my father's room. Instead, there was a room painted in an obnoxiously bright pink color. It was so pink. that it made my eyes hurt. Yvonne, Dad's room looks strange. Could he possibly have dementia? I rushed back to the living room and asked Yvonne, but she was lounging on the sofa, engrossed in the TV. "Oh, don't worry about it. That's my room now," she said dismissively. "But that used to be Dad's study. It was a waste of space, so I got rid of it. Books don't do anything for you." "Got rid of it?" "And I made it into my room. Isn't it cute, all pink?" I didn't say anything about her taste, but I couldn't stay silent about my father. "Doesn't my brother have a room with you?" "Yeah, we got the biggest room. But I wanted a room just for me. So, my old room." "Oh, that's my storage room. I've been collecting stuff since I was single, and that's where I keep it all." In a panic, I swung open the door of my old room, and was greeted by more blinding pink. How much does she love pink?
Mom, it's so pink.
My daughter, who had come to peek into the room with me, commented with wide eyes. Even for a little girl, who usually loves pink, this was too much. That was how much pink there was in my old room. A mountain of boxes stacked up to the ceiling. And pink merchandise covered every inch of the room. I wondered if the floor would give out. But right now, I had more pressing concerns. I hurried back to the living room and confronted Yvonne, who was clutching a pink cushion. "Where is Dad's room?" My father's study and my old room had been taken over by pink, and the big room was occupied by my brother and his wife. This house only has 3 rooms, excluding the living room and kitchen. It used to be my parents' room, my brother's room, and my room. By the way, since my brother moved out, his room became my father's study. I wonder where my dad sleeps. I thought he must have converted his study into a bedroom. To my surprise, Yvonne said to me, "He sleeps on this couch," as she casually dropped cookie crumbs all over the couch.
What?
As I was at a loss for words, I heard some commotion at the front door. Upon heading there, I found my father, his face pale, standing with the aid of my brother.
"Dad, what on earth happened?"
I questioned my brother as I supported my father, who looked like he was about to collapse. But my brother just shrugged and said nonchalantly, "He collapsed while helping at the shop."
He collapsed. What about the hospital?
"It's too much hassle."
Huh?
"Hospitals are just a waste of money. If you're free, can you help me out at the shop?"
Who's gonna help you, you dimwit? Get your wife to work first.
I found myself shouting before rushing to take my father to the hospital. After returning home, I confronted my brother and his wife.
He's been diagnosed with overwork. How much have you been making Dad work?
That's right, my father had collapsed from overwork. My dad is now lying on the couch. It's pitiful to see he doesn't even have a proper bed. As my face turned red with anger, my brother and his wife were still grinning. "It's not a big deal. We just had him get up at 3 a.m. to prepare for opening the shop, then he serves customers. In between, he does dishes and cleaning. And after 8 p.m., he closes the shop. Are you a demon or something? Even prisoners get breaks." The anger kept building due to their atrocious behavior. But my brother didn't seem to understand why I was upset. "We're letting him live with us, so it's only right that he helps us out." As I was at a loss for words, my sister-in-law nodded in agreement. "That's right. We are having difficulties because he's not being useful. On days when sales are down, we punish him by skipping his meals. He still doesn't seem to get it though. Oh, of course, he won't get a meal today neither." "What? Hold on. What did you just say? Punishment for not being useful? Skipping meals? This can't be real." The father I hadn't seen in a while was physically and emotionally worn out. With such outrageous behavior, I was so angry I couldn't find the words to speak. "Well, now you know, sister, so you can take him. Here." I didn't quite understand what my sister-in-law was saying, and as I was tilting my head in confusion, a duffel bag was placed in front of me. "What's this?" "This is all your father's belongings." "Wait, this is all of Dad's stuff?" "That's right." "No way, that can't be true. My dad, who had always lived in this house, only has this one duffel bag of belongings." I couldn't believe it and looked at my brother, who was smirking and nodding. "Is this really all he has? So, we're gonna have the useless one leave." "What?" My sister-in-law's words left me speechless, and my brother agreed. "Yeah, it's troublesome to live with him any longer. Since he's not useful, you should take him in, sis. Just as I was about to explode with anger at their outrageous behavior, a cheerful voice echoed throughout the room.
Huh, Grandpa's coming to live with us? Yay!
My daughter, who had been occupied by my husband, had surprisingly been listening to the conversation. Confused, I asked my daughter,
Do you want to live with Grandpa? Yes, I want to live with Grandpa.
She's just a little girl. She probably doesn't fully understand the situation, but her words gave me the push I needed. I looked at my husband, who was holding our daughter. Honey. He must have understood what I was trying to say. He quietly nodded and said, Yes, let's do that. Let's take in your father. Thank you. Our family is by no means wealthy. Our ramen shop business isn't going well, and my part-time job doesn't bring in much income. Our lives will definitely become tougher. Still, I can't bear to leave my father in his current state any longer. Dad. I gently spoke to my father, who was lying down. Let's go home together. As I said this, my father, with barely opened eyes, said, Thank you. It feels great to finally get rid of the dead weight. My sister-in-law threw these words at us as we were leaving. Ignoring her harsh words, we took my father and went home. I was filled with anger and regret. I was upset about losing my childhood home, and even more upset with myself for trusting my brother. I'm sorry, Dad. I had no idea that my brother would turn out this way. Even though my brother has always been irresponsible, he used to be better. Sure, he had his rebellious phase where he clashed with our parents, but I never thought he'd stoop this low. However, my father shook his head with a feeble smile. Don't worry about it. It's my responsibility for raising him to be this way. And I was the one who pushed myself too hard in order to help my son. I couldn't hold back my tears at my father's kindness and said, You don't have to work anymore. We don't have much to spare, so we can't afford luxuries, but you can rest. I can't take on more shifts at my part-time job because I still have my toddler daughter. But once she enters elementary school, I'll increase my hours. If possible, I'll even aim to become a full-time employee. There's so much more I can do for my father and my family. I'm gonna work hard. Thank you. My father smiled warmly at me as I clenched my fist. For a while after that, we had peaceful days. My father regained his health thanks to the much-needed rest. He now spends time with my daughter. My daughter is thrilled to be living with her beloved grandpa. Even though life was hard, I had no regrets about bringing my father into our home. He tried to give us his pension to help with our expenses, but I refused. Apparently, my father doesn't have much savings left. Apparently, my younger brother and his wife had been seriously milking him for money for living expenses. What's that about? I guess that's why he said he was worthless, because he'd been drained to the point of destitution. Really a ridiculous couple. Days continued to pass peacefully, but gradually changes began to appear. The changes came to my husband. Specifically, they came to my husband's restaurant. Lately, we've been getting a lot of customers. My husband muttered one day.
Really? That's a good thing, isn't it?
Well, yes, but... The hesitation in my husband's voice makes me tilt my head. It's great if your business is doing well, right? I think the taste has improved because I'm constantly researching, but I feel like there's something more to it than just that. What do you mean? I don't know. I have no involvement in the store, so if my husband, the owner, doesn't know, there's no way I can know. I wonder what it is. The conversation ended there, and I told my father. Dad, I've got a part-time job tomorrow morning. Can you have lunch at the restaurant? Sure thing. My father, who is fully recovered, still has a healthy appetite. On days when I can't prepare lunch, he eats at my husband's restaurant. My husband seems to be considerate and tries not to make the meals too greasy, but my father seems to really like the original taste. And he's even paying for his meals. Even if I refuse many times, he won't listen, saying, It's not good to mix business and personal matters. If you're proud of what you're making, you should accept the payment properly. So now my husband seems to accept the payment without arguing. And then the next day. My husband came home when I was putting our daughter to bed, and as soon as he entered the door, he shouted,
I've figured it out!
What have you figured out?
The reason why the restaurant is thriving.
What was it?
Well, that person did this and did that.
What's the result of all that?
Hey, speak clearly.
You too. Let's both calm down for a moment. He seemed to calm down after gulping down the cold tea I had brought him. Sitting on the sofa, my husband began to talk about what had happened that day. Today, in the afternoon when the restaurant was less busy, your father came in. And as soon as he came in, people started gathering around him. Huh? Your father is a god of fortune. What? What are you talking about? My father is just an old man. My husband continues. I asked some of the regulars. Yeah. Apparently, they really like your father's life advice. What? I was always too busy with food preparation and cooking to notice, but it seems that your father has been answering the customers' life questions. What's all this about? Apparently, the story goes something like this. My father had become a familiar face to the customers because he frequently visited my husband's restaurant. In fact, my father is a retired teacher and has a way with words that carries quite some relevance. By chance, a certain white-collar worker once shared his complaints with my dad. My father, while eating his meal, advised him, and apparently the man made a successful career progression after that. Huh? And hearing this story, a part-time worker asked to have a lunch with your father for consultation. They talked while eating our chili bean stew, and thanks to his advice, this part-time worker was able to become a full-time employee at the company he wanted to work at. Really? Another female customer shared her relationship issues with her unfaithful boyfriend over hot sandwiches with him. Okay. Now she's the wife of an Arab oil tycoon. You're kidding, right? Well, actually, she ended up happily together with a new boyfriend. A legend was born that consulting with my father while eating our menu leads to a turning point in life. What is this person even talking about? I cast a skeptical glance at my husband, who's feeding me this dubious information. Just then, my freshly bathed father appeared and I decided to ask him directly. Hey, Dad. Did you give advice to anyone today? Oh, well, I guess so. Perhaps because I'm getting on in years, people find it easier to talk to me. What did they talk about today? Let's see, a troubled father of a shut-in son, and a university student who was about to be held back a year for failing a course. You're kidding me. Apparently he's been giving advice, that much seems certain. Based on what he said, I didn't see how either of those situations could be easily resolved. I went to bed that night still half-doubting the whole thing. But then, a few days later, I've got the investigation results, said my husband with a solemn look on his face. All right, I'll listen to your urban legend. What is it? The father of the shut-in son whom my dad gave advice to the other day said his son has started going out and even got a part-time job. He was in tears when he came to tell us. Really? He said he talked it out with his son exactly as father suggested. And then there's the university student who was supposed to repeat a year. Well, if the decision's been made, he can't do much about repeating a year. Maybe he regained his spirits and got motivated again? He was able to move on to the next grade. What the hell? Apparently, he had failed a course taught by a very strict professor, which was causing him to repeat a year. But he went to the professor's office, passionately argued his case, and in the end, his paper was accepted and he happily advanced to the next grade. That can't be. I never went to college, let alone high school, so I'm not sure, but isn't that how college works? Well, whether it's accepted or not depends on the professor, I guess. And so, my father's reputation skyrocketed. By the way, there was a guy who came just to seek advice without ordering anything. How rude! To sit in the shop without ordering anything, he must have nerves of steel. Well, your father didn't really give this guy any substantial advice. It seems the guy's situation ended up even more dire. So, in other words, yeah, he is amazing. No, not that. It's not your cooking that's getting the rave reviews. You really had to say that? Hearing the harsh truth, my husband looked utterly dejected. But I mean, if the food wasn't good, they would just order the cheapest dish or just a drink. Since they're ordering properly, it must taste decent, right? At least decent. Regardless of the reason, my husband's shop began to thrive. Of course, customers continue to come even when my father isn't there, so it must mean the food is good, right? Good job, honey. Just as everything was going well, an unexpected event occurred. A storm has arrived. Namely, my younger brother and his wife. This happened by chance when I took a day off from my part-time job and went with my dad to my husband's restaurant. Despite the fact it was before opening hours, the door abruptly swung open and someone yelled,
"Give me back my dad!"
as they stormed in. My brother confronted me, venting with raw anger.
"I saw it online. Your business is booming because of Dad's life counseling. Even when Dad helped at my place, our sales were terrible, and now we're almost going under. What's with this difference?"
He demanded. You were pushing all the work onto Dad. How could he give life advice while busy with that? I retorted. Struck by my words, my brother faltered. At that moment, his wife stepped forward, pushing him aside. We won't make him work anymore. He just needs to sit and give life advice. Look, my father-in-law would prefer to live in his own home, right? We came to pick him up, so let's go home, she said assertively. How unreasonable. They practically threw him out, and now they have the nerve to turn the tables like this. It's outrageous. As if we'd ever hand Dad over to those two devils. As I was about to respond in kind, it was my dad who stopped me. He put his hand out in front of me, indicating I should hold back. He then moved to stand in front of my brother and his wife, who were now silent. Dad spoke quietly.
I understand what you've asked for. If things continue like this, your restaurant will surely go under.
So, you should give life advice in our restaurant. My brother started.
Let me be clear.
Dad interrupted.
Those who come for advice primarily want to eat at this restaurant. But your place, a cafe? It's no good, absolutely no good.
But that's not. My brother tried to argue.
It's true.
Dad continued.
Did you ever train anywhere to learn how to brew coffee? We thought we could manage by watching some online tutorials.
My brother replied sheepishly.
Yeah, that much is clear. Your desserts, like the cakes, are also pretty dreadful. It's no wonder sales are dropping and you're on the brink of closure.
But, stunned by Dad's critiques, my brother fell silent. He tried to argue, but couldn't find the words.
Don't disrespect your work.
Dad chided him. Yes. My brother replied, crestfallen.
How can you expect to have any customers if you're this casual about everything? Conversations are based on customers coming to enjoy a good meal. No one would come to your place since it's so dreadful.
Dad stated. The statement must have been spot on. My brother was at a loss for words.
Nobody would come for life advice either. Go back to basics and train properly. I won't lend a hand to you two, who take everything for granted.
He scolded them. With my brother and his wife not being able to reply, Dad shouted once more.
Don't disrespect your work.
After that, my brother and his wife left, unable to keep up with my father's momentum. It turned out that they left after talking to Dad without eating anything at my husband's restaurant. So, what happens next? Well, they say that giving advice without any food makes things even worse, right? It seemed that my brother's restaurant closed down without much ado. The debt they incurred when opening the place not only remained unpaid, but continued to pile up beyond their capacity to repay. My dad, in his kindness, gifted them our old family home as a parting gift, but even selling that couldn't cover their debt. It seems they're now living a life of extreme poverty in a rundown apartment. It turns out that not only my brother, but his wife, too, were in debt. I can only imagine the hardship those two debt-ridden souls must be going through. In contrast, my family and I are leading a prosperous life. My husband's restaurant is thriving, and I've quit my part-time job to help him out. It's pretty tough, but it's a joy to see my husband working so hard up close. Our spry dad helps us out by taking care of our daughter when we're busy. He doesn't give life advice much anymore, but customers still come, which makes us really happy because it means my husband's efforts are being recognized. Today, my husband is again cooking expertly in every ways. And when he cooks, the steam dances up, joining in a dance with the goddess of food.